Good evening, everyone. On behalf of Caregiver Saathi, I extend a very warm welcome to everybody who's tuned in to listen to this conversation today. Humanizing Our Healers. It is a series of conversation where we are aiming to raise awareness and also tell people that our healers, everyone from the healthcare industry, each of the healthcare professionals is a human too, just like all of us. With that, I am hosting a very, very special person today. When I had my conversation with her and I wanted to know a bit about her, she said she's a mother to two beautiful daughters. And also, she said that each of her patients and the interns who are training under her are her children too. With that, I welcome Dr. Shruti from the entire team of Caregiver Saathi. It's a great pleasure and privilege to be hosting you here, Dr. Shruti. For our viewers, can you please tell them a bit about yourself?
Thank you, Vandana, and thank you very much for this initiative, Humanizing Healers. Um, I'm glad that we are thinking along those lines because I think more than any other time, the last 1.5 years has made me realize how human we all are. Uh, I'm Dr. Shruti Tandan Pardasani, known more commonly as Shruti Tandan, and I am a critical care physician born in the era of COVID and practicing at Jasroot Hospital, Bhatia Hospital, and SRCC hospitals. Uh, like Vandana mentioned, I'm also the mother to uh, two mischievous girls, 7 and 9, and mother to a whole lot of uh, mischievous but aspiring residents, uh, budding intensivists, and my ever so dear patients. So that's about me.
Thank you so much, Shruti, for that. Like you said, pandemic. What a scary word that has become. And the last 1.5 years has been a nightmare for the humanity. Uh, in the last year and a half, the doctors who have been right in the middle of it have faced the brunt of it, and they've given more than the capacity of a human being. How has the last year and a half been for you, Shruti?
I've never really had the time to sit and think about this. And of course, there have been a lot of moments of stress, of anxiety. There have been moments of uncertainty and grief, which is being deep buried somewhere. So uh, the first wave, of course, came as a storm, and uh, I had the typical adrenaline reaction of fight, and it passed off probably in the adrenaline rush. But the second wave did leave me numb. It did kind of um, go down deep inside and shake out a lot of emotion that probably had been buried over the last year. There were moments when I would come home, and I was maybe spending 7 or 8 hours of the day at home. And in those few hours, I would come home, shut the door, and cry because I didn't want to see I didn't want my children to see their grown-up mother cry. But it was the only way to let out emotions in a few minutes. Um, when you ask me how has the last 1.5 years been, I know that there have been minutes when there was this time when we go into the hospital and we change into scrubs. And probably those 3 or 4 minutes that I change into scrubs literally had become my time. because every other time you're always involved in some decision making or some conversation, even if it's a decision making at home or at work. Uh, so it literally became my me time, and I found myself reflecting on a lot of questions and answers at that point of time. And one day I was a little amused because there was something which I had scribed on my email, and the answers just came to me in my scrub time. And I probably thought maybe at the end of this I should pen down thoughts of scrub time, and you know, obviously they just disappeared. So
Overwhelming. I all goose flesh when I hear you speak about what you've been through. Um, I think for the viewers, it is very important to know, like Shruti said about grief, a loss of life affects everyone, even it affects a doctor also. What we don't realize is, you know, when the family loses someone or when a family sees someone in distress, at least they're able to express their emotions. A doctor cannot. And that stays with them and they carry it as vicarious grief. How was that for you, Shruti? Because, I mean, being in critical care and intensivist, pandemic, crazy, crazy, crazy time. And I can't even imagine what you guys must have seen, triaging, you know, attending to caregivers, and just being there, and at times the lack of resources. How was all that, Shruti? How did you manage all that?
So, I've been an intensivist for the past 15 years. And I can easily draw a line and think of myself in the pre COVID era and in the COVID era. And there is a distinct difference. I mean, apart from the physical differences of the grey white hair and the obvious loss of kind of spark which used to be on my face, which I realized when Google shows me pictures from 2 years ago. But I think, you know, so
I
couple
am sorry. I'm going to interject. This spark is definitely there, and it shows when you're talking and when you're laughing. So yes, I think it's all in the mind. Sorry about
yeah.
interjecting.
But about 4 or 5 years ago, I had a resident, was a critical care trainee, and she would come and talk to me at length about burnout. And she used to keep telling me that, my husband tells me, Shruti madam jaise bano, and she, look at her, she's managing her family, she's managing her children, she's always bubbly. So at that point of time, that idea really interested me. So I told her, okay. I said, it's not that I don't go through these things. I said, I also go through stress. I probably don't internalize it. And there are ways to get rid of it. And we actually, that whole conversation or multiple conversations, I mean, she used to walk into the room when I used to be working on the desktop and then blabber out. And, we would have these kind of discussions. So it fueled a study on burnout in residents. And everybody laughed, especially the people, I mean, our departmental director, Dr. Sonabla, he's almost an octogenarian. So he kind of laughed and he said that, look at this generation studying burnout and stuff like that. But it was interesting because we realized that about 75% of the residents were undergoing burnout at some point or the other. And that was a huge number. We then did an interventional study to reduce interventions in burnout. But, burnout was something which, we would talk about, laugh about. But the COVID era, okay, me in the COVID era and the atmosphere of all of us in the COVID era, we actually realized that burnout was beyond this word, this feeling, when it went deep down inside. Uh, like I said, those physical characteristics is one thing, but there's a friend of mine, a colleague who keeps joking that we don't know what else we got inside. We don't know what our blood pressures are, what our blood sugar levels are, and we're not looking at what chronic health problems might have cropped up within our bodies in this pandemic. But it literally left you to a phase which, I mean, I used to always say this, that with critical care, you die, a little part of you dies every day. And you die several deaths before your own. But At the end of the second wave, I was wondering if there is anything left of me which is actually surviving. So, to talk about vicarious grief is one thing, but the way we've lost individuals in this in the last 3 months, young individuals. There were times when you would lose a person, but you always had a bright side to look at. You always had some patient who survived, and it's really sad because as a child, I had told this to my mother when my grandmom died. Um, I had given up eating sweets for a year. And later on, I looked at my mom and I said that we celebrate the death, the birth of a baby for maybe a few days, maybe a month or two, and then we forget about it. We celebrate a birthday for a day a year, but why did I mourn a death for an entire year? And I realized this was so true when I became an intensivist, that for days and days, it wouldn't leave you when you lost on a patient. You repeatedly, I would tell my residents that, look, you're not God. Do you ever believe that you have saved a patient? And the answer would always be no. Vandana. No registrar, no colleague of mine ever claimed that, yes, I've saved lives. I said, then how can you say that you've taken someone's life? How can you say that this person didn't survive because of you or because you could have done something better? I said, everything in your capacity has been done. You have to just accept this as you're putting in your karma, and this is what God is. I mean, you have to detach yourself from the fruit. But easier said than done. I realized that when you lose a patient, the grief doesn't leave you for days on end. And when a patient does well and gets discharged, there is, often a thank you message from the family, or there is just that gratitude in the eyes or a little twinkle in the smile, which makes you feel good. But why is that factor so transient? Why? I wish if we could just celebrate those victories, those survivals a little longer. In fact, when we were talking in the morning, I was going to mention to you that few weeks ago I had this idea and I have done nothing about it, and I often tell my husband an idea is like a cloud. If you don't pamper it, it won't shower on you, it won't sit on somebody's head. So I sat on this idea for a long time, but a few weeks ago I thought about starting like a Humanizing Healers, starting maybe a website or a web page which is on COVID victories, where people share, survivors share their positive stories, if nothing else, for a lot of healthcare givers to realize that there is hope. And for every patient we've lost, or maybe for every n number of patients that we've lost, there are a couple of them who've survived and who've there are, I mean, like last year, I wrote a message to my residents on Diwali. And I told them this Diwali belongs to you. This Diwali is all about homecoming. And a lot of people have made it back to their homes. A lot of houses are celebrating Diwali today because you all are here working on Diwali.
Absolutely.
And I think that is something, where we as humanity need to celebrate our victories and overcome our failures, because this is what happened in the second wave. We were so numbed by the number of lives lost. You would go in, one of my intensivists who I work with, and she also actually has an ambition of starting a palliative care center. So when you mentioned palliative care, she's the first person I thought of. She wrote a poem called Khidki. And one of the things which COVID did is it physically separated relatives from patients. Otherwise, there was a huge human factor. Now you see individuals who are dressed in hazmat suits there is very little human touch other than our voice and the emotion in our eyes, which is also covered by a pair of glasses. So it becomes so difficult for patients to emote, and very often we're trying to connect these two with a video call. The worst time is when you're going to put a patient on ventilator, you do that one video call to explain to the family and to get the relatives and the patients to talk. And every time we are asked, Doctor, how many days? The truth is, we don't know. We don't know if there is going to be another conversation. Most often, this would be the last conversation, and it's most difficult to answer this question. It's most difficult to press that red button and disconnect that call. And there is a child at the other end. That puts you into their household and makes you realize that you're going to snatch that patient out of this world. I mean, there have been times when I've actually questioned this decision myself. I mean, I've uh, known for being very quick and certain about taking decisions in the ICU. And this time around, when I put a patient on a ventilator, I actually asked myself that, he's conscious, he's talking, maybe it's worth giving him a few days of this conversation and letting him go. And then I have to tell myself, no, there's hope. Even out of 10 patients, I have 3 who go home or 4 who go home. For the sake of those 3 or 4, I don't know if this patient is going to be the one. Let me give him a fighting chance. But so I don't know what to say about what this wave has been. My best friend told me at the beginning of this. So out of my whole gang of school friends, I'm probably the only one who went on to become a doctor, and we were like a total fun gang. I mean, if I tell my
And
children,
thank you for becoming a doctor. Thank you so much for
yeah,
being there for all of us.
so they all told me this. Okay, but at that point of time, they thought I was mad, and they kept, especially my best friend, kept telling me that think about it, your life will get destroyed. Look at what a happy individual you are. Why are you doing this? But she, the first few months, whenever we used to talk, at the end of it, she used to tell me, think about it, we will be the generation to survive a pandemic. Every time when I come out of this, I remember her, and I remember that sometimes, there is a little glory in that frivolity, in that mischief of a layperson who doesn't know and should not care about what I'm going through, but just put me on a high.
How lovely is that? But they
Yeah.
must know, Shruti, they must know, because for the viewers who are listening in, I hope you realize what these wonderful, wonderful, I'm not going to call them doctors, wonderful human beings have gone through to save our lives. I was admitted, and I admitted with COVID, and I know when I actually interacted with all the residents and everybody there, and that was the time when I felt that how deeply it's impacting the emotional health also. Physically, with like you said, with all the hazmat suit, you guys look like aliens. You can't even put a finger on you anywhere. So if the patient first of all becomes
Well,
untouchable,
I
and
can't
then
tell you. I
and then
can't tell
you
you how observant patients are.
yeah,
Because
yeah.
like you correctly said, you can't recognize who's who. I haven't recognized some of my closest colleagues who are like family to me. I looked at him and nodded my head and walked across, and then suddenly I turned around and said, I not realized. But patients, I can't tell you how observant they are. So patients connect to us with a voice, with our eyes, and when I do a follow-up consultation with patients on a video call, they look at me and they say, Doctor, we're so happy to see your whole face now.
So, how difficult the pandemic has been for everyone. So, thank you for what you do, Shruti. Just can't tell you how grateful I think I am and everyone listening in today for each one of you who's been there. And also, like you said, the recoveries have to be celebrated. It's very important when there's data that goes out that there have been so many deaths, but also remember there have been so many people who lived because of them. So let's celebrate them, and also let's celebrate these wonderful people because it
Lived
is
because
because
of
of
him.
them. I'm sorry.
I said
Yeah,
lived because of
lived.
him.
Yes, absolutely.
I always
Ab-
say we are a team and he's the captain of our team.
yeah, yeah. So thank you for sharing that. Emotional, poignant, heart rendering, and also so beautiful. Uh, I'm a mental health professional, and one thing that kept going like a little kira inside my brain was, how is it going to affect the mental health of doctors? And I would like your opinion and your views on that.
So,
I mean, you
I've been very open about this, and I actually told my, when I had a conversation with my trainee a few years ago, I used to tell her everything which I felt. I mean, I used to tell her this, that it's not that, please, even if your husband tells you, tell him that madam also goes home and cries. Madam also feels sad, and this is part of it. So, there was a time um, just before the second wave, I was completely overwhelmed by what was happening around me. Um, I could not look at I could not look at living for another 10 years. Uh, I would, my daughter's sitting in the same room, and I would hate her to hear this, but I would be overwhelmed by the fact that I might have to live for another 20, 25 years to see them grow. And is it fair to leave a 19-year-old, because she's 9 now, alone in the world? And thinking about surviving for another 10 years just overwhelmed me. I never thought of ending my life, but I was overwhelmed by continuing to live in this world. Um, I did seek the help of a counselor who's also a friend. She was completely taken aback because this is totally not my personality. I She asked me to speak to a psychiatrist friend who's a senior from medical college, who, after hearing me out, and I've been through, I mean, I'm sure all of us have. So I lost a very dear relative, uh, my mom's younger brother, who I was really close to, and I lost him at my hands. I lost him in front of my eyes, and that's something I could not get over. This happened in July last year. In June last year, I continued to work. Uh, 13 days after that, I lost my grandfather, but he lived a good life. It was more something to celebrate, uh, the way he lived rather than mourn his loss. So I put all this into perspective. I put the work into perspective and spoke my heart out to her. She pinpointed that, she said, Shruti, first get hold of your sleep. She made me push in a few corrections into my sleep. I don't know if the sleep helped or those corrections helped, but 10 days within that, we were into the second wave, into that conversation. She messaged me, she wanted to check on me. I said, sorry, I haven't had any time to do any of the stuff you said because I'm just so overwhelmed with what is happening around. Of course, I used to come home and then sleep out of sheer fatigue. So I haven't revisited those thoughts as yet. I haven't gone into that phase yet. That anxiety has left me. I mean, there were times I used to just wake up in the night and not be able to go back to sleep. And the last thought, or the last patient that I thought about before I slept, would continuously race through my head. I would have palpitations at some time. I just couldn't see a reason and why this was happening to me. So I'm a very kind of versatile individual otherwise, with multiple interests, and I cook with my children. We do a lot of craft and painting, and I teach them how to act, and I do all that kind of stuff. But uh, anything that I did with them at that point of time um, was just because I needed to do it. It was like another mommy task rather than something that gave me happiness, and that's what made me realize something is not right. Um, Presently, I'm having the same kind of working hours, so still spending very little time at home and trying to squeeze in stuff. Thankfully, those thoughts haven't come in. I hope that not many of us face this, but yes, it's a good idea to talk about this. I mean, at that point of time, I shook my husband up. I told him, look, we need to do something about this. Um, I spoke to my parents about it, and I do think that mental health is as much of an issue as physical health. And I'm grateful that I had two people I could just reach out to, my psychologist and psychiatric friend, who left everything aside and put me at fore. And probably I'm also grateful that I got involved in work so soon that I couldn't think about it. I can't say that, I know that people keep thanking me for what I'm doing, but honestly, I love the work that I do. So I don't think that I deserve to be thanked for doing what I love and what I chose to do purely out of passion. I just wish for two things. I know it's a little self-centered, but I wish our patients would have better outcomes. And from a more realistic point of view, I wish healthcare was accessible to everybody.
Absolutely.
What really hurts me is when we have to withdraw care because somebody can't afford it. I'm working in a private hospital. I know that we have a lot of great social workers. We managed to get a lot of support, even from the hospital end. It's a hospital who genuinely does charity and uh, treats patients indigent, free of cost. For the patients who really get squeezed in this other middle class. And we were talking about that cloud visiting everybody's head. So there's a cloud which has been sitting on my head for a long time. And I wish that it sits on Narendra Modi's head and he does this. But,
I
but I wish that, a rich person can buy insurance, a poor person goes into indigent, but the poor middle class is squeezed. I wish Modi ji listens to me and every individual who's a taxpayer. If he's paid excess of 15 lakhs tax in his lifetime, he deserves a 5 lakh insurance policy for private hospitals sponsored by the government, and it can be 5x depending on how much tax you pay, because you paid taxes all your life and here you are, you know, in a better lifestyle to then go to a public hospital and can't afford a private hospital. And at some point of time when we think we're just reaching the finishing line with them, the relatives just can't afford care. We can do everything from the hospital end to waive off the care, but then there is some post care required. Who would pay for that? And it just doesn't seem fair that of all countries we should have a price tag on lives.
Absolutely, and this inequity is is something that the government has to address. There has to be a major change in our healthcare policy, so that healthcare becomes accessible to everyone, because it is a right. It is not a privilege. It is a right that each individual should have, and it should not be,
Trying to
you know,
my cloud off.
yeah, no, I am right there with you. I am right there with you. And maybe one day you and I will have a conversation about it and start a movement of some sort. So, and also, you know, um, back at home, how did your husband and your daughters see you? We outside of the hospital, and at least for me, who who was admitted with the COVID, I see you guys as superheroes wearing capes with shoulders of human beings, and I just want to reach out and give you a tightest possible hug. But what about the family members? I mean,
I'm really blessed. My husband is a doctor. He not only understands me, but he is a great filler. He really fills in for me wherever needed. He also volunteered to work in the pandemic. So he's not an intensive care physician, but he's a neurologist. He said, "I've done medicine. Why can I not look at patients from in the wards at least?" A lot of my friends, well-meaning at work, came to me and said that both of you don't work. What will happen to the children? Increasing the exposure at home. He's never stopped me from doing what I want to. So I thought the least I can do is to not question his decision. But he magically managed to not only commit himself to working for COVID patients, but also working as a mother and a father at home. He took care of everything from their online schooling, which really put a question mark on me. I mean, I was like, why did I put them in school if I had to homeschool them? that apart, I mean, he managed everything. He's never made them miss me. And this is one message: forget about family planning, but everybody must have two children. I think I survived the pandemic because my kids had each other, so I've never heard the "I'm but" thing. In fact, I was telling Vandana this morning that there are times when on a rare occasion, if I've had lunch at home, my 9-year-old looks at me and says, "Mama, it's so nice that you're having
Yay!
so much
Mama's
time
home.
today." And I was just commenting that if she was maybe 5 years older, I would really be looking there and thinking that is there a tinge of sarcasm, but they're too young and too innocent for that. But yeah, I've had extremely cooperative children. In fact, every time somebody sends me a thank you note or chocolates, I hand it over to my children. I say, "This is come for you all because you're sharing your mother with them."
Absolutely. How beautiful. How beautiful is that? And I mean, I think so much love to your children and also gratitude to your husband for just being there for the children and for you, because without support it gets very, very difficult. It's very
I think
overwhelming.
God plans it like that, Vandana. Everything just fits
Yeah,
in. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and it's also the way you perceive it. So yeah, and also I would definitely like to know what do you think about our conversations, humanizing our healers, because this is something that no one's done before, and Caregiver Saathi has taken this initiative. So what do you think about this?
I think it's a wonderful initiative, and I'm glad that uh, a non-medical. So there are a lot of these forwards which circulate only in medical groups about how doctors feel and how the ones who how it is when you heal. And I often tell people that share this in non-medical groups. So I'm happy that somebody who's not a medical um, has that empathy to realize that yes, we're as human as everyone. We uh, are probably the same as a car mechanic who's doing his best to repair the car, except that we so badly want the car to recover, to get repaired because we know you can't buy another one. And there is an emotion both in the mechanic and in the car itself. So, there are times when you see an individual, critical care, you see individuals when, or healthcare providers see individuals when they're at their worst. And we're often introduced by conversations to the relatives and to the patient when they recover at what glorious human beings they were. I think on the same light, it's important to realize that there is another aspect to your healer as well. And when the healer leaves the hospital, we carry a whole lot of baggage home with us. No doctor, no doctor ever wants their patient to do badly.
I was
No
just going to
doctor.
say that, yes.
So remember that. Don't question decisions just the way you would not question what your parent would do, or perhaps you would, but then you would understand with greater faith that whatever is being done is being done in your best interest. So, the way I said that I think of my patients as another set of children, I think as relatives of those patients, we need to look at doctors in the same way. So I realized that a lot of my empathy finally changed for the medical community when they saw me working, when I became a doctor. Maybe because they saw what their child was doing. And maybe this is important through conversations like these and through initiatives like these. It's important for us to look at it from that perspective, not making decisions. Vandana, huge difference between the first wave and second wave. One of my colleagues would correctly put it. In the first wave, people were too scared. They were too scared to do to come out of their houses, too scared to eat. I mean, half the hospital was working at maybe a fraction of its strength. But uh, ev- everybody had a lot of faith and a lot of gratitude that somebody is there out there working. The second wave, one of my colleagues very correctly put it. He said, "हमारे अलावा सबको पता है कोविड का इलाज कैसे करना." There was so much exhaustion from questioning, from doubt. Uh, so sometimes, he would joke and say that seeing the patients is the easiest thing to do. Talking to the relatives is the toughest job in the world.
Oh,
Because
yes.
why did you give remdesivir? Why haven't you given remdesivir? Why steroids? My friend recovered with IVIG, but it doesn't work that way. And why, if I had a medication which would heal you, Why would I not give you that and make my life, my nights less sleepless, and my own body more rested, my mind more rested? So I think realizing this and an initiative like that, okay, uh, I keep saying this, that I'm not God. No doctor is God. We are all humans, and we are happy to be humans. We just wish that we were humans who made no errors, but unfortunately, it comes with a package. It's somewhere embedded in our chromosomes. So you have to forgive us that.
So
But,
I would say the chromosomes are to be blamed.
and I am sorry that they're not intentional.
So thank you for sharing that, and also for everyone who's listened, who's heard her point of view and what she shared today. I hope you realize that none of them has ever wanted a patient to not recover. So when you make demands on them, please do not. They do their best. They do their best because they want their patients to live. So, with that, I also want a message from you for everybody who's listening in. First of all, please tell them to be careful. This third wave is around the corner and not put extra load on you guys. I'm so sorry. Just couldn't stop myself.
No, absolutely. I think my message would be, please get vaccinated, practice COVID appropriate behavior, and above all, trust your healers and trust all humanity. I think the big factor missing in today's world is the faith of one human being in another. Whether it's a doctor, whether, numerous times I am asked by people living in different cities to give a second opinion on what somebody is doing to their patient in another city. And it really pains me because I know that that doctor there is doing his best. And why would you question your faith in another human being when I can't be at the situation, I can't see what he or she is doing? So there's nobody who's a better judge than the person there on site. And likewise, it's our faith in each other. I mean, this whole battle of multinationals about drugs, about vaccines across countries puts us as a human race in very poor light. And sometimes, it makes me wonder, had we lived a life so unworthy that we deserve this pandemic and we deserve to perish? And I'm sorry for being so nihilistic, but then and again, something wonderful and somebody wonderful comes along and restores my faith in humanity. So let each of us be that little light in each other's life, that little light of faith, of trust and belief in humanity and goodness, and spread that word. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think, and let's together realize that what this pandemic does, and let's support each other. Like Shruti said, for their sake, for your sake, you hurt while they take care of you. So please follow what she just told all of us and support the medical fraternity. Just be there with them as much as they are there for you. Any parting happy fun moments in the life, if you've had any happy moments where you actually felt like let's do a little jig.
So speaking of the jig, okay, so the nurses are an exceptional force. So there was a time when I had just taken two patients off the ventilator, and the next day when I go into ICU, the nurses know that the next thing that Dr. Shruti will come and say is, make them sit on the chair, let's make them stand, let's make them walk. So I have both the patients who are just off ventilator. This is in the first wave. One sitting on the chair, the other one walking. The first one sitting on the chair is singing a song, and the second
Oh,
one
wow.
walking is dancing to that song. And it's
How
such a
lovely.
priceless memory, and it's just a memory that is trapped in my heart.
Yeah.
I'm glad that we have no videos or nothing else to that, but it's just a moment that I go back to, and it is such a celebratory moment and so lovely. And they were both doing it. It was like you're off the ventilator. So he said, "मैं गाना गाऊंगा." I said, "ठीक है, गाना गाओ." So the other patient said, "And I will dance to that."
How
So
lovely.
walking and doing a little jig.
How
Amazing.
lovely. What a lovely. I think I wish there was music in our show, then we would have also danced today. But some other time. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your human side with us, Shruti. And I'm so, so, so grateful that you have been a part of this conversation with me. And we have been able to tell our viewers, look, here she is, though she saves life, but she's a human being too. She is a mother, a wife, a friend, a daughter, everything that you and I are. So let's just celebrate them, let us just support them, and be grateful that they are there with us. So thank you for, again, I'm going to say thank you for all that you do, though I know you don't like hearing it, but
Thank you,
thank you.
everybody. Jai Hind, and please trust each other. Every human.
And Modi ji, please listen to our
Land my
plea.
cloud, yeah. Land
Yeah.
my cloud on your head.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Shruti. It's been a pleasure talking to you from the entire team. Very,
Thank you,
very
Vandana.
grateful.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.